halfway through another work week as Ohio State gets ready for its Big Ten opener at Washington. And if it's Wednesday, and if it's the Beat, and if that's Jeremy Birmingham, and if I'm Austin Ward, it must be time.
For stocks?
For stocks.
Okay.
So Stonk Watch time. We probably need to put a little different spin on it because last week we talked about the end of non-conference play, who impacted it the most. I'm wondering if they all need to be, I don't know, prospecting stocks, future-based Big Ten stocks for guys who maybe have not had the impact quite yet that you think are going to be relevant over this 4-week stretch for what we've said about how the vantage point of it has changed slightly based on what happened a week ago. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to dig into your depth when you play 3 road games in 4 weeks, and they're physical Big Ten opponents. So there's going to be folks that are going to have to emerge right here. Yeah. And I think that's where we need to begin.
Yeah, and that's why I think if we're going to do that, you have to begin with Kenyatta Jackson.
Okay.
Like, there is no one guy on this team that has been, like, I want to be very careful how I couch this because I don't think Kenyatta's been disappointing. He just has not flashed as consistently or as prominently as we would have expected based on 3 years of waiting behind Jack and JT, the opportunity to be a starter. Now he obviously had a little bit of a injury issue showing up with the knee brace last week, 2 weeks ago. Like, for Ohio State to get out of this 4-game stretch unscathed, someone else on that defensive line has to emerge and become a game wrecker. And he still is the guy that has the most opportunity to do it, the best physicals to do it. We're entering now a time when, because Caden Curry's been so effective, because Caden McDonald is causing so much chaos and demanding so much more attention, like, you're actually probably more likely than ever to see Kenyatta Jackson left on an island against the tackle and just to go out there and win a one-on-one situation. He has to win a couple of those, and I think that has to start this weekend. Damon Williams is going to be a challenge to defend. It's going to require discipline. It's going to require like eyes that are true and not getting distracted, not getting confused by the eye candy and the misdirection and the one cuts and all the things that Damon Williams does. So I think Kenyatta Jackson is the guy that can elevate. Like, this defense is pretty freaking good. Okay, it might be the best in the country. It's got a couple of the best pieces in the country without question. Maybe the best secondary in the country without question. But some other guy has to emerge and be ready to take that next step. And for me, it has to be Kenyatta Jackson. To get the best out of this defense, that's who it has to be.
Yeah, I wonder if the way the opponents play quarterback, or the quarterbacks that they've had, and the dual threat ability, and even Arch, some of the best plays he made for Texas in week 1 were with his legs. Yeah. And you and I have talked with and about Matt Patricia for the last couple of weeks when it's like, this is not a true one-on-one, go win your pass rush. Right. Like, there is a pocket passer back there who will get it. The same was true for Parker Navarro as well. Like, I don't know if we've maybe seen, and this is not to make excuses, not to justify it, rationalize it. I'm just trying to speculate that maybe, and we've seen this in other years, that September, you want to be careful. You're not going to let a quarterback use his legs to beat you, string together the end of drives. And that, like, maybe we've just seen the more disciplined approach, stay in the rush lane, build a pocket, because then they've supplemented that with Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks to some extent, but like a lot of different pieces and moving parts where the defensive line, I think it has felt to me, and maybe I'm wrong about that they're doing a specific job that is not about, you need to go have 5 sacks.
No, you're not wrong about it. I mean, that Matt Patricia said as much heading into the Ohio game, but you can still impact the game without getting sacks. And we saw that out of Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau multiple times over the last few years, where in the first half of the season, especially last year, they were both like regularly close to getting sacks, but not getting them. But they were finding other ways to impact the game. Jack against the run, JT helping in the screen game and being just a really disciplined defender. With Kenyatta, and some of it is because competition. Like, I don't count that Grambling State game for pretty much anything. Ohio, again, with the knee injury, whatever had slowed him down, I don't think he wasn't on the field all that much. Like, you're getting into this stretch of games where you got teams that are going to be able to run the ball. Jonah Coleman for Washington, their running back, I mean, he's 5'9", 230 pounds. He's a bowling ball. Like, this is going to be a game where you're going to need to hold your spot and win and set the edge. And those are the where I think Kenyatta can make an impact without actually having to get sacks. Yeah, and I don't know that he has not done a lot of that in the first 3 games.
No, that's certainly fair. And times he's been close. There's been others where he's got those big, long arms, lengthy arms out there to knock some passes down or impact the passing lane. I don't think, I'm not arguing against you. I think that he has not been utterly dominant.
No.
I don't think it's also been all that problematic.
No, it's been fine. But again, if the goal here is what Ryan Day talked about on Tuesday, is get better.
Yeah.
He's the guy that elevates this. If you put somebody opposite Caden Curry and the destruction that he causes, if you just put someone out there that is a pure dominant pass rusher, then the entire look of the defense changes, because then it allows you to let Arvell Reese spy more often, because he's been the best pass rusher. So if you don't have to use Arvell that way because someone else is stepping up, then you can use his speed and athleticism to cover the flats or to go, do different stuff. So I just it's about elevating. Who is going to take this defense, which is really, really good, and make it even better? And there's nobody that, to me, is more exemplifies that than Kenyatta.
Yeah, I think it's a fine place to start. I'm actually going to slide it over to the 3-tech spot in terms of the biggest room to elevate, because, again, it's partially because I don't think that Kenyatta Jackson is that far away. Like, I think it's gonna happen for him. And that's, I think, your point as well. We all know that it can happen and that it needs to happen, or even that it should or would or could happen. But we haven't seen that. And for as complimentary as Ryan Day was of Taiwan Malone and said that he graded out as a champion against Ohio, and the conversation about the ceiling and getting through this, even this game specifically, as you mentioned, with Washington's ability to run the football, the success that they've had rushing it in the red zone and scoring touchdowns and piling up the numbers that they have, not just with Damon Williams, but with that backfield as well, you're going to have to be very strong up front. And even with some of the good stuff that we've seen from Taiwan Malone, if you watch some of the success that the first three opponents as a whole have had when Taiwan Malone has been on the field, they've run pretty much right at him. And that Eddrick Houston has not, to your point, had the same type of dominant impact that we thought Kenyatta Jackson would have. Neither one of them have reached that point quite yet. This is not a sell stock. This is still, I believe strongly in it, that it is a blue chip stock, that it is worth investing in. And Ryan Day did not, on Tuesday when I asked him, give any sort of credence or acknowledge the injury in training camp in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Whether,
in fact, he purposefully, it seemed, went around it.
Avoided it entirely. Yeah. So whether that means there's any validity to my theory, or whether he just thought that was ludicrous and didn't need to address it, or the fact that he just doesn't talk about injuries and the availability report at all, or some combination of all three of those things, doesn't matter. Like Eddrick Houston,
he said the word consistency like 6 times in the sentence or two after the question.
And that goes back to a year ago as well. Like, penalties and snap in, snap out performance. He is 19, 20 months into being on campus at Ohio State and being asked to play as a full-time 3 technique when that was not even the position that he was recruited to. So you narrow that focus down, and the body change that he had to make after they moved him at roughly this time a year ago to go play a different position. Again, that is not an excuse. I'm trying to rationalize and understand and contextualize why maybe it hasn't happened at the way that we thought, because we did spend 8 months saying, well, the top 4 on the Rushman, that's not a concern. You're going to get this from Kenyatta. Caden Curry and Caden McDonald, I think you can separate that. Those two have lived up to the billing. But Kenyatta Jackson, statistically, and we know that there's value in his leadership, and Eddrick Houston, not even in terms of production, but like not even starting against Ohio, that's not what we anticipated. We thought that everything would be fine with the top 4, and then the depth would have to elevate behind them. And that, I don't know if that's the case. They're like halfway to getting what we thought they would get just from the front 4.
Yeah, and one of the problems with being like the juice guy that Eddrick is that if you have a day where your juice is a little low, it stands out. It's different, right? Like, you notice it. And the same thing with Kenyatta in a way. It's not to knock what they're doing. There were multiple times in the last 3 years where we had very similar conversations about Jack Sawyer, about JT Tuimoloau, about Tyleik Williams. And eventually they turned it up. Now, this is the first weekend, I think. Again, I'm not even counting the Texas game in a lot of ways, because that was such a preseason spectacle and almost like a showcase for college football, as opposed to a game that was going to impact how this season really felt long term.
Sure. For
Kenyatta, for Eddrick, you have to take that step now. You have to be the guy, because Caden's playing so well, and Caden's playing so well. Like, you have to take that as a personal challenge. And if you're a juice bringer like Eddrick is, and you're an energy guy, and then you have a down week, people notice it.
Yeah.
Like, it stands out. And so it's not to say, well, Kenyatta, what's going on with Kenyatta? What's going on with Eddrick? It's to say, you were put in this position and you knew heading into this season, like, this was all going to be on your shoulders. There's a lot of weight taking over for 4 NFL draft picks on the defensive line. And like, the expectation is the expectation. The standard is the standard.
Oh,
and so
that's interesting.
How does Eddrick provide that? How does he elevate himself? And it's great that Tywone Malone is taking steps to make himself valuable, and grading out as a champion is not something Ohio State gives off willy-nilly. It's not a charity, but now
it's the way that this program evaluates itself.
If you're going to go out to Washington and beat Washington, if you're going to beat Minnesota that's going to try to run the ball up the middle, if you're going to go to Illinois and beat a team that's going to be wounded but still trying to then play for their pride and their rest of their season, like, you have got to be prepared for a fight. And those guys have to step up for Ohio State to win these fights.
Yeah, and that's even the terminology that Ryan Day is using. Called this trip out to Washington on Saturday an absolute battle. That's a lot more defensive line talk. I said a couple of months ago that, like, we were going to have to put a pin on that, and we did stop talking about Jack JT, Tyler Kintai for the most part, but it's an unfortunate reality that coming into the start of Big Ten play, that's still the dominant discussion point for this team. And
everything else has been so good.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, like, I don't feel like we're forcing it. I just think if we were looking at this team through the perspective of winning the Big Ten, getting to the playoff, trying to compete to defend that championship, they got a banner up there for it. Like, that's the spot that it has to get better. And there aren't many that we can really talk about that way. It's the defensive line. It's, arguing about if a change needs to be made, what the change should be for the right guard specifically, or the run game as a whole, finding a pecking order at running back. And, like, that's pretty much it.
And, well, there's one other piece. And again, if this episode of the Stock Watch on the Beat on the Austin and Berm Show is going to be about, like, who can elevate this team, who can change what's already the number 1 team in the country, make it even better, I don't know. This stock is not particularly focused on just Brandon Inniss. Maybe it's Brandon Inniss and Max Clare. One of those two, or both of those two, have got to emerge as a true third option in the passing game, because we are seeing Julian Sayin not be reluctant to throw it to Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate, which makes perfect sense.
But they're pretty good.
But eventually, you're going to find teams like Penn State that will find a way to bracket both of those guys, and someone else is going to be available. Someone else is going to have to step up, and I don't know who the best option is for that. I don't know if it's Brandon Inniss and what he can provide in the misdirection game and jet sweeps and that sort, or if it's just Max Clare being a seam demon. That's right, a seam demon.
Wow, a seaman.
A seam demon. He is not a fisherman, although we're heading out to Washington, and we're going to probably, do you think those guys are going to do the fish throwing?
Brian Hartline said that the Buckeyes did that during their visit out there in 2007.
The fishmongers, he said they did that, but I doubt they do that this time.
Yeah.
This is not that type of trip.
No, it's
Jim Tressel like to
experience
life.
education.
Yeah. But to me, I don't know which guy it is. If it's Brandon Inniss or if it's Max Clare, one of those two has to emerge and be like a 6-7 target a game guy for Ohio State.
Huh?
Yeah, like, it's not enough. One target for the best receiving tight end in the country is not enough.
Yeah.
0 targets to your slot receiver at Ohio State is not enough. Because 0 is 0. That means they didn't try it at all. That means they didn't even throw it his direction.
Well, I think the coaching staff tried.
Yeah, but I'm saying the trust, the security for Julian Sayin comes from it being proven out here. It's easy to throw it to Jeremiah Smith because you've seen him continually make plays, or Carnell Tate making ridiculous catches week in, week out. So finding a way to trust those guys and give them the opportunity to expand the offense is vital.
Yeah, you're right. I think that you don't even have to limit it to just those two, however.
Just a third option.
Yeah, because Will Kazmarek is really good. And we have seen him in the seam cause some problems demonically.
Seam demon.
Sorry for throwing you for such a loop with that terminology that I used. But that could be Will Kazmarek. That could be Bryson Rogers, or I don't know, maybe even Mylan Graham, just to pluck a name out of it.
Well, it's not going to be Mylan Graham or Bryson Rogers. We know that.
It could. I mean,
it could be.
It could be, but
the point is,
if your point is, which I wasn't trying to argue against it.
You are.
That I feel like primarily focused on in that slot where Max Clare can be a receiver who is the extra, he's going to line up in the same spot as Brandon Ennis. Like, I don't know that it has to come from that specifically. Ohio State seems to really want to use the running backs and potentially the screen game in the passing attack as well. Like there are a number of ways that you could get to a third option to take advantage of it. And
every week you're going to see more and more and more coverage shifted towards Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Every week. As long as Julian Sain isn't looking in other directions, you're going to start to see Illinois will do a very good job. I know they gave up 110 points to Indiana last week. I don't even know how it's possible, but they did.
They did.
But you have to find ways to get other guys involved. And some of that's just Julian not pulling the trigger so quickly because those guys are out there. And some of it is those other players, whoever it is, whether it's Carnell or whether it's Brandon or Max Clare or Will Kazmarek or Bryson Rogers or who cares, whoever it is, like they just have to get involved. And I know they wanted to play more receivers in the last few weeks than they did. I figure like, just do it. Like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think they overthink things. Like if you want to play other guys, just play them. Devin Smith didn't need to go out there and block guys in 2014. He just needed to go out there and run past them every once in a while to let you know that this is available. And so just put him out there and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know if the situation is identical because Ohio State was not really concerned at all about its ability to run the football.
Right.
They knew that what Zeke was going to do, and those slobs were moving people all season long. Like it's this iteration, I think, is more complicated by what they're trying to figure out with Bo Jackson, with C.J. Donaldson, with James Peoples.
You're a trio of running backs, but then you also love being in 12 and 13 personnel. And so like you're pushing back almost against type to say, well, we're not this wide open offense. This isn't who, but like, it's kind of how you're built.
It is. That's how they're best. And I think that, if we're going to loop in the ground game complement to that, it's Tegra Shabola, and this is not, clearly Ohio State believes that he remains in a position ahead of Ethan Onyanwa. So I'm not saying that the job is in jeopardy, although he's been removed from 2 games, once for performance and once for penalties. They put him back in.
Which is also a form of performance.
Well, correct, but not an inability to block. Like they clearly believe that Tegra Shabola gives them the best chance to win at this point. And if that's the case, looking at the PFF grades and taking those with the grain of salt that you have to, like Ohio State's evaluation is way more important. Ryan Day did not seem as concerned about his pass protection or his run blocking, Tegra Shabola's out of the Ohio game, as it seemed to me just watching in real time. My evaluation doesn't matter at all. It's completely worthless, in fact. But the fact that they've made that change twice, it has seemed like there's been more success with Ethan Onyanwa. And the only other resource that I can tap into is PFF, which there's not a noticeable gap between the numbers for both of those guys, but Ethan Onyanwa's grade is higher than Tegra Shabola's. Like, if Tegra is that guy, if Tyler Bowen and Ryan Day continue to believe in him as the best option, I think that there's just got to be the next elevation. If that's the theme for this show,
it is.
He's the one, and we can look.
We saw it in the playoff. He did it. He can do it,
and he did it when he was banged up. It's because, and it's the same thing with Kenyatta Jackson. It's we all know that these guys can do that, and maybe they will. We're looking at the smallest sample size that we pretty much can have with 3 games, and one of them you've said doesn't count for anything. Right. So.
And the other one, 2 of them really don't count.
And one is against a MAC opponent, which again is a different degree of difficulty altogether. But we know that Tegra can do that. And I want to be fair. I'm not trying to pick on him specifically. You can look at reps that Phillip Daniels would want back. You can look at reps that Carson Hinsman would want back. Luke Montgomery has missed blocks at left guard. I think Austin Saravel has been pretty darn good. I'm struggling to remember one where I felt like he was getting beat. But that's the spot where Ohio State itself, not me, not you, not PFF, has said, we're going to make a change in the game, and they've done it twice. Yeah. So if he's going to take that next step, or when he takes that next step, that changes the picture for the ground game. It changes the protection. It changes everything.
Yeah. Is there another organization whose name, when used as an abbreviation, makes the sound of what we should feel when reading that organization's work? Because PFF is pfft.
Oh.
That's kind of how I feel about PFF.
Really?
It's pfft. I feel like they need to add a T on the end just so I can go pfft. But
okay.
Whatever. No, you're right. I mean, again, if the goal here is how do you get better, and this pre-con, non-con has felt very strange because there was so much hype about the Texas game. And as a game itself, it was a little bit clunky for both teams. I don't think either team would be like, that was our premier performance.
Let's fast forward to the end of the season. We're ready.
You did what you had to do. You won the game for Ohio State, and it obviously has a lot of value when it comes down to rankings and that sort of stuff at the end of the day. But I don't know that it really gave Ohio State at the end of the day.
Oh.
I don't know that it really gives you the sense of like who you are or where you're going with this team.
Yeah.
You certainly don't get that out of the Grambling game. And the Ohio game was a better test, but even that, you should have been a 60-3 type of game if you didn't step on your own toes a bunch of times. So the players like Kenyatta Jackson, Eddrick Houston, Tegra Shabola, these are guys that we've seen do it. So like now the pre-con, non-con is over. Like this is the real season starting now. And you have to elevate. And however you do that, whoever is going to provide that for you, that's the guy you have to ride with if you're the Ohio State coaching staff. It can't be about loyalty to Tegra because he's in year 4. If Ethan Anianwa has been better in the run game and that's where you're struggling, then that's what you have to do it. Like, so I don't think they're like holding themselves back, but I don't know that we're getting a true sense of where they are in their evaluation process. And some of it's because we just don't get a chance to talk to assistants in these formats very often where they're being really honest about where things are. But for me, Tegra is integral to making sure this offensive line is at its best. And I believe he's the best option because of his ability to pass protect, which Ethan Anianwa has certainly struggled doing. So you can't just rotate guards because then if you do, the opponent will know like, hey, they're going to run here.
We got a run alert.
So like you can't do that, but you got to find a sweet spot for them. And that's why I think you need to figure out, is there a replacement? Is there anybody that's capable of giving you what Lorenzo Styles does at safety? And we've talked about him a lot in the last week. We've raved about him throughout, but I still wonder, is there an opportunity for a Bryce West whose athleticism is maybe a touch higher? It's not a knock on Lorenzo Styles to suggest that when he's out there, he's the guy that the opponent attacks. Like it was the way last year, it's the way it is this year, and that's not a knock on him. Like there's always going to be a duck or a whatever you call it. What's that term?
That it is the duck.
Like there's always a duck, and that's not to say that he's a bad football player. It's just if you have to attack Jalen McClain or Caleb Downs or Lorenzo Styles, you're probably going to try Lorenzo. And so does what he provides Ohio State so far outweigh what others can provide? And I don't know if we know the answer to that yet, but I don't know that we're going to find out either because he's clearly doing all of the other little things in such a great way that like the value there is through the roof.
Yeah, I think we use this comparison in the offseason, and it may be more apt than we even realized when we talked about Tanner McAllister and the stability and what that afforded Jim Knowles in terms of the system and the safety-driven defense, but the flexibility that provided with the rest of the safeties and the comfort that you knew the assignments were going to get handled. The athleticism was good enough. It wasn't first-round NFL draft pick, but it was NFL caliber. It was going to get you to the next level, and you were going to make plays, and you might occasionally give up some.
And Tanner McAllister is still on an NFL roster.
He's a very good player. I wasn't. I mean it as a compliment, not a slight.
No, it's definitely an apropos comparison because.
But when we talked about the future of that position, it was like, well, doesn't Jordan Hancock elevate beyond what Tanner McAllister can do? And the answer was yes, but he wasn't ready to do that yet. And if that's apparently, I know whether it's only 3 games, it could change in a month's time. Yeah. Bryce West just now had 2 extra weeks of practice before getting into the Big Ten play. Maybe he's more prepared if the situation arises in Lorenzo Styles. We expect him to play, but if the shoulder injury pops back up again, or you give up a long touchdown the way he did against Ohio by not making that tackle, maybe the next time it's not Jermaine sliding into slot. Maybe he stays at corner and Devin Sanchez doesn't come off the bench and Bryce West comes out there. I don't know. Maybe that will change over the course of the year. I feel like there has to be at some point, if we're talking about Lorenzo Styles already having dealt with an injury and 3 road games in 4 weeks, that somebody else in that secondary, not just Devin Sanchez, is going to have to play at some point.
Yeah,
period.
It's inevitable, and that's the way sports are. That's the way the schedule is built. I think what you've got out of Lorenzo Styles, what you're getting, is a guy that you trust, a guy that you think will not make the major mistakes.
Yeah.
But then he made a huge one against Ohio, in a game, in a play that made it a 13-9 game. And so, like that, I think you're on high alert for. Like, okay, is he going to try to do too much because people are coming after him? People know that he's the guy that you throw on. So it'll be interesting to me to see how Lorenzo approaches things moving forward, because he's out there because of his leadership, because of what he does off of the actual playing field, but he's also out there on the field because he's the guy that will be the security blanket. And if he's not providing that, then the question of where's the value, I think, really changes a little bit, because if you're not getting the security, he's not making the big mistakes, then the athleticism disparity between him and Bryce West becomes much less relevant.
Yeah. You think this is a game where on the road, loud, spread is single digits currently, not quite
sounded
like
8.5.
Do you think this counts as a game where Caleb Downs is going to return punts?
Yes.
Okay.
I would do that if I was in Ohio State shoes. I hate to bring up November 30th a year ago. Do you recall? Do you remember that game?
The 30th of November? Yeah, I remember it.
We had pregame keys beforehand, and I said the one thing that I felt like would open the door for an upset was if Ohio State just surrendered hidden yards, like letting punts go over your head. And it happened multiple times. And I'm like, well, okay, that opens the door. I think you are entering a similar conversation about how does Washington get enough of an advantage to win this game? And that's if Ohio State gives them
hidden yards.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I think this is, and we referenced it on Freaky Friday last week when we got asked multiple times, by the way, thanks America, for the questions about special teams, about the solution. I think this one counts. You're going to play Rutgers and UCLA in November. Don't waste any reps on Caleb Downs' body at that point. I think this is a game that qualifies where we were asked, if you missed it, folks, on the mailbag, if we were the special teams coordinator, what would we do? If I'm in that role today, preparing for Washington, I'm thinking, okay, this is a game. Caleb Downs is going to be the punt returner this week. Whatever you need to do on the practice field to get ready for that, which may be nothing for Caleb Downs because he could roll out of bed probably and return a punt for a touchdown. But I think it has to happen this week. So if I'm talking about elevation and if I'm talking about stocks, special teams is always included. This is a game where you can't afford a letdown. And I think you got to put your best foot forward. You should do that every week. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But this is a Caleb Downs game for me.
Agreed.
All right.
And it's not. Again, a lot of these discussions are going to be couched in a way like, well, they're putting down this player. Like, it's not that. We both said on Friday, I think I came around to Bryson Rogers being my return guy just because I think he's got a special gear that he can get to other guys can't. You stuck with Brandon Ennis as your choice. That's not a knock on Brandon. He was this close to breaking one last week. He's been close at other points in his career. It's just about what Ryan Day talked about on Tuesday when he was referencing Eddrick Houston, like consistency. Yeah. If you're back there and 1 out of every 3 times you don't catch the ball or it goes over your head or it hits in front of you and then it bounces off your leg, like that's not good enough at Ohio State. And
not on the road in the Big Ten.
No, special teams Ohio State doesn't need special team explosives to win games.
Yeah.
But Ohio State will lose games because of special teams mistakes.
Yeah, I agree.
And they have multiple times in the last few years. And so it's just about making the safe play. And Caleb Downs is the safe returner. Who can also take you to the house.
He's the safest and he's got the highest ceiling. It's a pretty good combination. I don't say, well, then just use it all the time. I don't think that it's always worth, because the risk is not giving up hitting yardage. The risk is 10 extra times that Caleb Downs gets hit over the course of the year. That's the part that gives me a little bit pause. But if it's a situation where the opponent can beat you, and make no mistake, Washington at home, flying across country, when the Buckeyes flying across country, they can win this game. Mm-hmm. They can. So you don't waste those opportunities. Good news is we are one day closer to that as we kick off this Wednesday. We're going to be back in here later tonight. Buckeyes practicing a little bit earlier than usual, so snap judgments should also be in your 97.1 The Fan YouTube feed, or 10 TV's feed, or 10 TV Plus, or your Apple, Spotify podcast feed a little bit earlier than normal as we get to that on Wednesday evening back here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Not sure exactly who all we're going to talk to, but I bet it's going to be interesting.
It's always a mystery.
Can't wait to find out. Thanks for spending part of your Wednesday morning with us here on The Beat. Were some, I don't know, they weren't even really stocks.
No, this is just like, who's elevating?
Who needs to elevate?
Who needs to elevate?
Who needs to raise the portfolio?
Who needs to ascend?
That's it. He's Berm. I'm Austin. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you guys later.